Okay, and here we are. So Sarah, in your own time, and I'm just going to make sure that I can move the arrows around. Okay, so yeah, off you go, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you everybody for coming this evening. We're all really busy in our lives, and I think the point was made earlier. I'm just trying to run a church and work full time, and that's really tough, especially when you've got a building, or you want to develop things within a building, or you have a building that is effectively a money pit because it comes with a history and heritage of the Unitarian movement. So myself and Paul are delighted to be here this evening to just share with you the process of writing one bid, and those skills can be transferred across to other funders as well. And this is the ASDA bid that we were successful for. So next slide, please, Lizzie. Before we do drill down into the ASDA bid itself, to save you a little bit of time, there are general grant finder websites, and because we're very community based in Wakefield, we tend to go for the types of funding bids that embrace lots of different types of community groups that then come in and use the building, but then that's always framed against the Unitarian backdrop. So here are some particularly, shall we say, more accessible grants, grant finder websites, and they're really good. They gather up a lot of the different grants that come out, and they come out all the time. Everybody says things, oh, an awards for all, or heritage lottery, or these big ones, but actually there are lots and lots of smaller grants that if you've just got a smaller project that your community has said, look, we'd really like to do this, then they're more appropriate. And these grant finder websites do the work for you. So I have offered to, if you are interested, Lizzie will send you a copy of this slideshow, so you don't worry about writing anything down. You'll get these slides afterwards. Next slide, please, Lizzie. And keep lovely. So if you do have these buildings, it's not necessarily that you need to apply for just a building grant or just a community grant. Sometimes they come together. So for example, the Screwfix Foundation, which is a funding for all one, it's only £1,000 or £2,000, but they are happy to fund capital projects. So say, for example, you need a new a bicycle rack, for example, to enable your community to cycle to the chapel or to come to the events at the chapel. They'd look at providing funding for that. But it may well be that you put on a cycling proficiency course alongside that. So then that has a legacy in the community. So looking beyond the obvious, it doesn't have to be just for grants or just for buildings or just for community, and thinking quite creatively. Funders like that. They really like that creative kind of thinking, but we will get down into some nitty-gritty in a moment. The picture you can see on there is the back of our chapel on the vestry, and that is, I decided to pop that one in there because this piece of work that was done actually came out of the ASDA fund that we're going to talk about very soon. Next slide, please, Lizzie. We're looking specifically at, if you are looking just for building work grants, then the All Churches Trust is a good one. Garfield and Weston, we're delighted to have just been in receipt of £15,000 from them. They just wanted to help with the building. And the Pilgrims Trust is another one. But it's important to have all of your pieces in order, as it were. So you need to be able to reference your latest quinquennial inspection report. You need to be very clear about why you need the money. what will the money do, not just to the building, but to the legacy of the building, and also how will that money transform your community? Very obviously, it provides a safe space. And in these very difficult times, your argument might be, well, we want to, oh, thank you for that question. If you have an older building, part of the upkeep of it is you have a 5-year report done by an architect that goes over the building and says, there's a few problems with the foundations, or there's something going on with the roof. So you're bringing in an expert every 5 years, and then you've got 5 years to sort of work through and sort those things out. Does that answer that question? Okay. Yes, next slide, please, Lizzie. Thank you. Use the past, thank you, to inspire the future. We work with a really broad brush stroke of people, and we like to jump on board celebrities. You know, we really do court the media, because everybody likes the publicity. You know, they do like to have their face in the paper, and they like to meet people who are interested. So, Paul, did you create this slide? Can I just ask? I think you created.
Yes, I created this whole section.
Yeah, would you like to pick it up from here?
Yeah. A lot of the funding bids for buildings, like us, the building owners, to explore how we're going to give back to our communities. And one of the best ways of paying back to our communities is to get high profile of celebrities involved. So at Westgate, we had Dr. Michael Wood, the TV historian, come along a couple of years ago now and take the first steps to being a patron in our scheme to restore the catacombs. Obviously, these people want to know, as do the funders, why is your building important, and why do you want the money rather than building X, Y, or Z? So it's trying to knuckle down to the important people and stories. It's saying, why is your building important? Why you need the money? And it's really useful in preparing our funding bids to work with your architect and other heritage professionals in outlining the scope of the works, the cost, because there's an upfront cost of all of this, and then there's got to be some mitigation. We found that out at Westgate a couple of weeks ago when we went, oh dear, oops. So yes, there's a whole process of preparing the funding bid for repairs to the building in terms of costing, engaging with professionals, and also working with the broader community. So for those of you with a good eyesight, in the second photograph on the slide, at the bottom, you might recognize faces from Time Team on Channel 4, and the little chap with the red socks and the backpack and high-vis jackets is yours truly, many, 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 many years ago as a TV archaeologist. Next slide, please. Here we go. Funders like to hear about what we're doing to tell the story of our building. So it's important that if you have a heritage building and we're wanting funding for it and community work, that we get out there into the streets and say, hi, we're here, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to attempt to do, come along and take part. So at Westgate, I am not afraid to wear the silly clothes. I'm not afraid to be in front of a TV camera, and I'm not afraid to drag people off the street and say, you will enjoy this, come into the catacombs, etc. It's really good if we have a heritage building to try and get a heritage group of people involved who want to learn about the history of your chapel And then they can be little mini evangelists who go around to other people in your community with interest in the past. Yeah, change. Next slide. You just beat me to it. So PR is a huge thing here. Sarah today did a big piece for the Yorkshire Post, local newspaper, and it's certainly worth your time contacting local newspapers, local radio stations, local TV. Building works cost money. Funders like us to have match funding, and that can be raised through guided talks. Guided talks, giving talks about your chapel and community, selling books, and importantly, as I hand over to Sarah, from other grants. Match funders like to have match funding in place, National Lottery, Garfield and Weston. We as a community, the trustees, will have a pot of money for repairs, which is money towards your big project. So if we can get 15,000 from Garfield and Weston, 20,000 from Asda, 20,000 from somewhere else, that all goes into a general pot to make your dream, your event, or your building watertight. So over now to Sarah for some nitty-gritty stuff about grant funding. Sarah.
Thank you, Paul.
Next slide.
Thank you. So picking up from what Paul said about getting celebrities involved, Karen Wright is the Bake Off, we affectionately call her the Bake Off Queen here in Wakefield. She was a runner-up in Bake Off, and she actually earns a living now going around all different places. So she's a chum. She's a chum because what tends to happen if you get your face, so you cannot be what you cannot see. So if you get your face in the papers, if you get, you know, a bit more on social media, and I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable with this, however, being visible with both your successes and your not so great successes is really important, because then people are coming along with your story, and funders like that, but so do external advocates. So Karen Wright loves what we do, and when we got I put in for some Arnold Clark funding. It was £1,000, and it was effectively to do a project called from pot plant to plate. So whatever you can grow seasonally on your windowsill, what can you then cook? Now, we could have done that, and it was linked to the fact that the Asda grant had got us a new kitchen and all the rest of it. But it's much better if somebody else does it who's got a bit more clout. So it's stronger. The point here is that the broad brushstroke comes from the community. It's how do you get people through the doors? Well, they'll come initially to see somebody like that's a well-known local celebrity, and the emphasis there is on local. So this slide looks at what Wakefield particularly is doing, and how we are aligning as a chapel with the council's bigger vision for tourism. So the council in Wakefield's vision is culture and heritage. And that's a really rich theme to follow. Now, this has grown really organically, again, if you'll excuse the pun, considering you've got a photograph of a tomato on there. But in Wakefield, the artists community has been pushing this cultural evolution for about 10 years, and I personally happen to have been involved in that. And because I've been involved in the chapel, I've hosted lots of things in the chapel, lots of singing things. We had the Georgian ambassador, we hosted him about 5 or 6 years ago. So the chapel's always been on the fringes of the cultural and creative community in Wakefield, not just through me, but through other people as well. And if you've got a space, any kind of space, it doesn't have to be grand. It can, if it's a warm space that's welcoming, then you've got that opportunity to link with a community. So you've got to start somewhere. So we decided that we would put both feet on the path of linking the chapel to our city's vision of culture and heritage, and it's part of the to bring tourists in. So it's part of the bigger economic vision of the city. So when I'm writing grants, I Google things like the State of the District report. In the State of the District or the State of the Nation report, you will find out what ward you are in, which you may already know, but there's a living index of deprivation on there. And if you happen to fall into some of the lower areas of deprivation, you can say in your funding, we serve a community which in Westgate Chapel's case sits in the bottom 10% of deprivation in the country. So that immediately opens doors to a pot of money that's ring-fenced by lots of funders for areas in low areas of deprivation. It's worth reading those reports, because also in those reports you can look at the health of the people in your parish, if you like. If you've got a high instance, for example, of obesity or loneliness or mental health or the elderly, then that allows you to build on an idea. So what you know straight away, the needs of the broader community. So say, for example, you've got a really high percentage of elderly people living on their own, then you've immediately got an opportunity to go to Age UK or to another charity that works with elderly people that are suffering from isolation and loneliness, and you begin to collaborate. So you kind of hop on to what they're already doing, but you say, I've got a warm, safe space, and can we come and see what's going on in your community and see what your community could have from us? What are their ideas? And if you kind of go, we are as we know we are a welcoming Unitarian movement, but we have these resources that we want to share. So hopping on to other charitable organizations shows collaboration, and the funders love that. So just staying on this slide, there's more lists there of the links that you can follow through. Some of them are Wakefield specific, some of them are national lottery, Arnold Clark is national, Heritage Fund is national. I've put the Heritage Fund one in there because it specifically links with our GEM community, Global Ethnic Majority. That's replacing the BAME, so the Black Ethnic. So the BAME, that BAME acronym is we don't use that anymore, we use GEM. And that's kind of another quite important thing. You need to be up to date with the acronyms that are being used for these things. So we've got we actively work with our City of Sanctuary that work with asylum seeking community. So we've got that as a link, and we often do projects together. So that co-production collaboration is really important to show when you're writing your funding bids. And most cities have got community foundations, and actually they're the grants that are the easiest to get, because they're really based in the grassroots of what's going on in your area. So I've just put community investment in Leeds, but if you were to Google community investment in the name of your nearest city or town, up would come a link there. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Okay, so just to let you know, today we had a rejection from a funding bid from Nova. I was very upset because we were actually asked to apply for that, and we were given a brief and we've done all of our work. We've established some groups already in the community. We've got a Singing for Mental Health. We're running a monthly bereavement support group, all voluntarily. And the grant was to develop that. And they came back and they said, we love what you do, but you don't need us. We're going to give the money to somebody else. So when you get rejections like that, you kind of go, don't. Never mind. But what they did feed back to us today was that moving forward, can you please build in how you're going to sustain the project after it's finished? So ask, for example, for a contribution to the groups that you are running. So we're happy to kickstart you, but you need to build in contributions to the groups afterwards. What you do need to be aware of is that a lot of people are chasing very few pennies. There are more people out there now who are chasing funding pots. It makes it harder, but when you are established, they tend to go, nah, they don't need our help. But if you are just starting out, they tend to like go, well, they've just started, let's invest in them. So if you are just starting, that's a really good thing. So in the beginning, in the very early days, in 2018, something like that, we were collaborating with Wakefield Civic Society, and we were all learning together. And I had written something, and I had an inkling that really it wasn't about telling the funders we know what our community wants, but I did defer to, because it was an interesting experience, I deferred to the gentleman who was the president, and he said, I think we just need to tell them. We need to tell them how good we are. We need to, and of course they didn't like it at all. The awards for all, and here we have an example. This is what the bid was. So this is how not to do it. The thing about funding as well, funding applications, is that you only have so many words. So you are restricted in the words. Sometimes it's characters, and they count the gaps in between the letters. So if you're really busy telling them Wakefield Civic Society has been working with Jim Tanko, blah 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 blah, byproduct of the blah blah blah. If you're really busy doing that, you never get down to the nitty gritty. So my advice to you is ditch the sentences, go for bullet points, and don't tell them all about you. Well, we've been established for. Don't do that. They don't care. They don't care. They don't want to know about that. They want to know about the ideas that the community has brought forward. So when you do get this slideshow, you'll be able to read that and go, this is one we don't do. Next slide, please, Lizzie. So our rejection letter taught us a lot. Ouch. But, you know, come on, we're all grown-ups. We can learn from it. So, dear Ms. Cobham, thank you for your time. To apply for National Lottery Awards for All. National Lottery Awards for All is a really good one. It's a rolling program. So sometimes funders have deadlines, like you've got to get it in by the 31st of October. Whereas in National Lottery, you can just, you know, you can keep submitting and keep submitting. Whilst you told us your project aims to enable women to explore their sense of place, purpose and identity through creativity and the arts, it was not clear how this would impact on the community or what wider issues it would address. All right, did I not say? And really, it's not because we didn't know in our own minds, and indeed with our own experience, we just didn't say. And the best way to do it is to get the women to say, or your community to say, in this case, it was a project for women. Top tip, don't video them and insert the video expecting they'll press the video link to watch Catherine, who said, this project is made, you know, I've got this, I've been involved. They won't watch it. I've had a rejection. I had a rejection a couple of weeks ago, and I'd been given some some wrong advice about inserting a video. It was actually from a GEM community. They said, well, if they were just insert, we'll come and record us, insert the video, and it's in our own words. Thank you, Louise. Yeah. And the rejection letter came back and said, you have absolutely not demonstrated that there is a need for this project. And another thing, don't insert video links because we won't watch them. And I was like, but I demonstrated that there was a need for this project in the women's own words. They told me, that's innate, so don't do it. It's really tempting to do because you think you're being a bit clever, but they don't like it at all. And I felt like I'd had my hand slapped, and that's fair enough. So it's important to us that you involve your community in the design, development, and delivery of the activities you're planning. Design, development, and delivery. We believe this will help your project to be better supported by the energy and strengths that exist within your community, and it's more likely to be successful as a result. The interpretation is don't tell the community what you think is going to be good for them. Listen to them, right? So, for example, if you need a new kitchen in your Unitarian chapel, talk to, we have something called Grow Wakefield here. So there will be an environmental group nearby in a village. It could be just a little, use Facebook, do a bit of research. There'll be community allotments. So go along and say, how you doing? What do you do with all these veggies? What do you want to do with these veggies? And then they'll start saying, oh, well, you know, sometimes I've got more veggies than enough and I really don't know what to do with them. And then say, well, do you want to come and have a look at our kitchen? And they'll come along and they'll go, well, this would be marvelous, and I'd love to make and bake, and then we could take them out to children in schools, because schools can't afford to feed children even though they really need the food. But this kitchen's terrible. So you go, aha, we have a potential collaboration and project. Then you go to a school and they say, oh, intergenerational. So you've got retired people on the allotment with all these spare veggies. You've got primary school children that need feeding. We feed their bodies, mind and soul, do we not, as Unitarians? And then you're the center point, but you need a kitchen to do that. So you gather quotes, you get the quotes from the people, and then you say, and according to the State of the District report published at the beginning of 2022, our area is in the most deprived of the, etc., etc. So I know it's quite a lot of legwork, but it's really worth it because it's really fulfilling as well, because then you have all these people that are benefiting and they get to know, and then you're tackling loneliness. So that's sort of a bit of a thing. That's what I mean about thinking really creatively. This last bit, when assessing your application, we did not feel that you had sufficiently involved people. Oh, they were right. I hadn't at that time. So that rejection letter taught us an awful lot. Anyway, you'll get a copy of it on the slide. Next slide, please. Thank you, Lizzie. So how to get the best out of the grant system to engage the community. Collaborate, as I've mentioned, with existing non-religiously associated but aligned community groups who've got a good track record and strong governance in community engagement and a strong USP already. For example, women, mental health, LGBTQI, GEM, disability groups. The focus right now is on young people and trying to help them catch up from COVID-related issues. So a good connection is a City of Sanctuary if you have one in your area. If you're going to work with young people, it's a wonderful opportunity to grow a new generation of Unitarians, actually. So, but a lot of funders don't like to see the word religion. So when Dreamtime Creative, that's my arts company, partnered with Westgate Unitarian, we always say, how do funders define? They don't define your community, Catherine. Your community defines your community. Yeah, so your community is a broad brushstroke. So is it a geographical community, or is it a strand within a community? Is it the LGBTQI community, that your community defines itself as that? So the funders just want to know what your community is. So the community defines itself. They use their own language. It is, I understand, it's a real kind of if you can collaborate with existing arts companies or other Age UK, they will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So they will provide you with statistics, you know, so you don't have to go looking around for stuff like that. Now, link up with local large community funders. I mentioned now ASDA. So the ASDA one was really interesting. It actually took us 9 months to jump through all the ASDA hoops. They've never done investing in spaces and places before. Our project is the first one, and they actually made a film about it, and I'm hoping that film will come out really soon. I went into my local ASDA and said, who's your community champion? Oh, that's Lisa Staggs. I said, can I talk to her? Oh, hang on a minute. And she just happened to be in, and I just talked to her and said, hello. And she said, well, this won't work because I'm like, well, no, it might work. Can we have a conversation? Anyway, I managed to persuade her that because Westgate Chapel, we are in the bottom 10% of deprived areas in the UK, and it's the only green space in that ward. So that meant that as a community champion, Lisa was able to go back to the board, and she advocated to the board about the project that we had in mind. Now, the thing about ASDA is they weren't that interested in what the people were doing. They were more interested in the impact of the building works could have on the community. So in this particular case, they were actively looking to refurbish church halls. Yeah, that was a big one. So like community centres, put new kitchens in, replace boilers, so that spaces that couldn't be used before could then be used by the community. And that's why I've chosen this one to talk about tonight, because I'm really aware that a lot of our buildings are, you know, some of them aren't actually fit for purpose, or they just really need a new kitchen, or they really need disabled toilets, or they really need those things in order for things to happen in those spaces. The last point is really use the match funding. And you might have £50,000 in your chapel account, and I know that might be a bit ambitious, or you might have gone into the community, like to the council, and said, do you have 1,000? You know, we can talk about match funding at another time if you like, but basically once you've got one fund in the pot, you go right, and you say to another funder, I've got match funding. So you just have to get one. Not everybody wants match funding for their projects. You just have to get one. It might only be £5,000, but also match funding can come in different ways. It can come in kind. So it's volunteer time. It's we're going to provide a warm space and some meals and absorb the cost of that. So that there's different ways of defining match funding, and actually some funders prefer that because it shows the community's involved. Next slide, please, Lizzie. Language funders like to hear. Show you've been approached by a local community group and have therefore identified a need. So basically, you're the broker. You're the broker between the community group and the funder. So the emails come from them. An email, a quick phone video, feedback forms from any of the community events you've done. So I'm really aware that, you know, many of our congregations are involved in Pride, or if they've had a stall, they are doing lots of pastoral work. Ask some of your community members or to fill in a feedback form, like how this activity made me feel. I feel less lonely. I feel like I've got a connection. So you're beginning to build the evidence that you can put in your funding application. I've put there in capital letters, do not tell the funders about your amazing idea. We all have great ideas, but it's not what you think the community needs. It's what the community knows it needs. It's a real catch-22. You can start the conversations. You can genuinely say, go to the allotment group and say, I've got a kitchen. Do you need a kitchen? And let them, you know, you can kind of plant seeds. Again, excuse the pun. So there's a little bit of something. This is the video, a couple of videos of some women that came to some of the things that we did over the summer, that obviously I can't submit to funders now because they don't like it, but it's pretty impressive. Please, Lizzie, when you're ready.
So I've stopped the slideshow just for a minute so that I can share the video. Looking at the time, I feel like we should choose one of the two videos. So when I screen share, please can you tell me which one
Sure.
you'd like me to share? Can everyone see that? Can you see that, Sarah? Yeah. So it's either this one or
the other one. Yes, please do that one. That's a bit shorter as well.
Bobby, hello. I was wondering, would you like to share with us what you've enjoyed about this Weaving the Strands course, and also what's made you keep coming back for the course?
I have been reaching out to any sort of community groups after sort of lockdowns and things, just to try and reconnect essentially and rebalance my mental health. And this really appealed to me. It was a day that I was free to come as well, which is obviously fantastic. I love doing anything creative and I love working with my hands. So yeah, it's appealed on many levels. And coming here, meeting such a fabulous group of ladies was just amazing. We just had such a bond and sort of community feel to us straight away, that I was just absolutely excited to come back, as well as finishing the projects that I'd started. I've even taken my weaving home as well, to be able to add more to it, and just absolutely thoroughly enjoyed every part of it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Bobby. I appreciate that.
Oh, that was such a joyful video. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go back to your PowerPoint now.
Thank you. So whilst Lizzie's going back on PowerPoint, I'm wondering what you think could be pulled from that video that the funders would want, is speaking the language of the funders. Does anybody have any ideas if they want to pop it in the chat? Give them a minute. Yes. I was looking for something to rebalance my mental health. So if you're quoting, yes, thank you. Yes. Yeah. So remember, thank you, meeting community need. That's brilliant. Connection. She's isolated, she's lonely, but rebalancing mental health. So you can't, I did try, I submitted that one to a big bid and they didn't watch it, blah, blah, blah. So lesson learnt. But you can write, Bobby said she needs something to rebalance her mental health, quote. And it seems ridiculous because you could make it up, but that wouldn't be okay. So next slide, please, Lizzie. Funders like to hear about the impact of a project. Use what you've already done to prove you've got a track record. And these are quotes which I'll just let you read in your own time when you get the slideshow. But yeah, so the impact. So what difference do you as a community want to see this project making? Bobby said, I want my mental health to be rebalanced. So you always have to do an evaluation afterwards. So then you have to give evidence that what you've said and identified in the beginning has happened, or if it hasn't happened, why. Next slide, please, Lizzie. So ASDA, linking concepts together, success. Okay, so there's no way you can read that. So we're just going to kind of, please ask Lizzie for the slide so you can look at it properly. And every single ASDA community champion is going to be getting probably a version of this, and that's absolutely okay because it's worked. So next slide, please, Lizzie. The point about this one is, look how dense it is, but there's lots of writing. But if you go back a slide there, Lizzie, sorry, I should have. Oops. Forward.
Is this the one you mean, Sarah?
No, the next one, sorry, I do apologize.
This one?
Oh, it seemed to have frozen on my screen.
This one?
There you go, that one.
Yeah.
So I inserted photographs. I took screenshots of, with the permission of the person. So this is a Facebook post. So with the permission of that person, I screenshot that and I inserted it into the bid. So that's a way of getting their own words. And that demonstrates that there's a need. They've identified the need and they've engaged in the need, and they feel how they feel after they've done that engagement. So this was the mental health aspect of the ASDA bid. Next slide, please, Lizzie. And again, I've done it again, just in case they didn't understand the first time just how powerful the project was. I've put it in again. Next slide, please. This is a really powerful part of the ASDA bid, and that was, you cannot reap what you do not sow. And that was a quote by Adiba, who's the lady in the photograph, and she wrote that quote. It's called pyrography if you hadn't come across it before, but those words are her legacy. So she put her legacy and how it had impacted on her. She went away understanding that if she didn't try things, she would never grow. And that is part of our raised vegetable beds in the garden. So that was really powerful, and it showed how all the things had come together. So the ladies, the women, it was a women's project. So they built those raised vegetable beds. So they learnt new skills and they put their words in. That was what was important to them. So that's a really strong legacy. Next slide, please. You might have noticed on there as well that a lot of them did our chalice too. Times for questions, thoughts, comments. We are listening.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Paul. I'm going to stop the screen share and I'm going to stop the recording as well.